Clara awoke with a start. Silence. The only sound was the soft ticking of her old grandfather clock downstairs. 12 a.m. She had been having that dream again, the one where she was running, always running, but never getting away. She tossed and turned, trying to shake off the remnants of the nightmare. Just as she was about to drift back asleep, she heard it. A noise, a soft thud, like something falling to the floor below. Clara froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Was it just the floorboards settling? An old house like hers was full of creaks and groans, especially at night. But this sound was different. It was unfamiliar, and it had definitely come from downstairs. Clara took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. She told herself it was nothing, but a shiver of fear ran down her spine. She had to know. Clara slowly got out of bed, her bare feet sinking into the plush carpet. The silence in the house was deafening now, amplifying every little sound. Each creak of the floorboards beneath her feet sent a jolt of fear through her. She tiptoed towards her bedroom door, her hand trembling as she reached for the doorknob. Taking a deep breath, she slowly turned the knob, wincing at the faint squeak it made. The hallway was dark, illuminated only by the faint moonlight filtering in through the window at the end. Clara strained her ears, listening for any sound. She could hear her own breathing, shallow and rapid. Hesitantly, she took a step into the hallway, then another, her fear growing with each step. She had never felt so alone, so vulnerable. As Clara crept down the stairs, each step seemed to echo in the silent house. Her hand tightened around the heavy flashlight she had grabbed from her nightstand. Reaching the bottom of the stairs, she paused, listening intently. The living room was dark, the furniture appearing as menacing shadows in the dim light. She scanned the room with her flashlight beam, her heart pounding in her chest. Suddenly she heard a muffled curse coming from the kitchen. She froze, her blood turning to ice. Someone was inside her house. Clara took a step back, then another, her mind racing. She had to get out of there. But as she turned to flee, the kitchen door swung open and a shadowy figure emerged. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment in the pale moonlight, and Clara knew she was in terrible danger. Terror lent speed to Clara's feet. She didn't scream. There was no time. She spun on her heel, her heart hammering against her ribs, and sprinted back towards the stairs. But the intruder was faster. She heard his heavy footsteps pounding after her, getting closer. Adrenaline surged through her veins. She had to get away. She couldn't let him catch her. Reaching the back door, she fumbled with the lock, her fingers shaking uncontrollably. She pulled at the door, but it wouldn't budge. It was jammed. Panic welled up inside her. Throwing her shoulder against the door, she slammed it open just as she heard the intruder reach the bottom of the stairs. Without a backward glance, she plunged into the darkness of the night, racing towards the safety of the woods behind her house. Section 5. Determination in the dark. Clara ran until her lungs burned and her legs screamed for mercy. She had been running for what felt like hours, but she knew it had only been minutes. Each step was a battle against the fatigue that threatened to overwhelm her. The woods were dense, the darkness almost complete except for the sliver of moonlight filtering through the canopy of leaves overhead. The moonlight was her only guide, casting eerie shadows that danced and flickered as she moved. Thorns tore at her clothes, and branches whipped at her face, but she didn't dare slow down. Every scratch and cut was a reminder of the danger she was in, a testament to her determination to escape. She could hear the intruder crashing through the underbrush behind her, his heavy breathing echoing through the trees. The sound was a constant reminder that he was getting closer, that she couldn't afford to make a single mistake. Fear lent her strength, urging her onward. It was a primal fear, one that pushed her beyond her limits, one that made her forget the pain and the exhaustion. She had to lose him in the darkness. The forest was her only hope, its labyrinthine paths and dense foliage her only allies. Stumbling over a fallen log, Clara fell to the ground, the impact knocking the breath from her lungs. She lay there for a moment, dazed, the world spinning around her. Pain shot through her ankle, but she couldn't stay down. He was getting closer. She could hear his footsteps, the sound of twigs snapping under his weight. Scrambling to her feet, she limped towards a towering oak tree, its massive trunk offering a sliver of concealment. She pressed herself against it, her heart pounding in her chest. Pressing herself against the rough bark, she held her breath, her chest heaving, and listened as the intruder ran past her position. She could hear his frustrated muttering, the sound of his footsteps fading into the distance. For a moment, she allowed herself to hope. But she knew she couldn't stay there forever. She had to keep moving, had to find a way out of the forest. The night was far from over, and her determination was the only thing keeping her going. Clara waited, her heart still pounding in her chest, until the sounds of pursuit faded into the distance. She knew she couldn't stay hidden forever. She needed to find a safe place, somewhere she could regroup and figure out her next move. As she limped through the darkness, she noticed a faint light flickering in the distance. Hope surged through her. Could it be a house? Gathering the last of her strength, she stumbled towards the light. As she drew closer, she realized it was a small cabin nestled amongst the trees. A rickety porch wrapped around its perimeter, and smoke curled lazily from its chimney. It looked deserted, but it offered shelter. Clara cautiously approached the cabin, her hand hovering over the rusty doorknob. She listened intently, but there was no sound from within. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the door and stepped inside. The interior of the cabin was Spartan but cozy. A fire crackled merrily in the stone fireplace, casting a warm glow over the rough-hewn furniture. A wave of relief washed over Clara as she realized she was alone. She limped towards the fireplace, the warmth from the flames soothing her aching muscles. She needed to tend to her injuries and figure out her next move, but first she needed to make sure this haven remained safe. Her eyes fell on a rifle mounted above the fireplace mantel. It was old but well-maintained. Clara had never held a gun before, but she knew this was her only chance. She had to be prepared to defend herself. With trembling hands, she took the rifle down from the mantel and examined it. It was heavier than she expected, but it felt strangely reassuring in her grasp. This, she realized, was her lifeline. The first rays of dawn filtered through the gaps in the cabin shutters, painting streaks of light across the wooden floor. The cabin, once a place of refuge, now felt like a fortress she had defended through the night. Clara had spent a fitful night, the rifle resting across her lap, her senses on high alert. Every creak of the wooden beams, every rustle of the leaves outside had kept her on edge. But the intruder hadn't returned. The silence of the morning was a stark contrast to the tension that had filled the night. As the sun rose higher, casting its golden light across the clearing, the forest seemed to come alive, with the sounds of birds chirping and leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. Clara felt a renewed sense of determination wash over her. She was alive. She had faced the unknown and come out the other side. She had survived the night. The relief was palpable, a weight lifting off her shoulders, and she was done being afraid. The fear that had gripped her heart was now replaced with a steely resolve. She rose to her feet, wincing as her injured ankle protested, a reminder of the struggle she had endured, and walked over to the cabin window. Each step was a testament to her resilience. The world outside looked different now, fresh and new. The morning light bathed the landscape in a golden hue, making everything seem more vibrant and full of life. It was as if she was seeing it for the first time. The colors were more vivid, the air crisper, the sounds clearer. Clara took a deep breath of the crisp morning air, filling her lungs with the promise of a new day, feeling the sun warm her face. It was a simple pleasure, but one that she now cherished deeply. She didn't know what the future held. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges, but she knew one thing for sure: she was a survivor. She had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, ready to face whatever came next with unwavering determination. Leaving the safety of the cabin, Clara began the long trek back to her house. The cabin had been her sanctuary, a place where she had found refuge from the chaos that had engulfed her life. But now it was time to return, to face the world she had left behind. Each step, though painful, was a victory march. The forest, once a place of fear and uncertainty, had become a proving ground for her resilience. Every crunch of leaves underfoot was a reminder of the battles she had fought and won. She was no longer the same scared woman who had fled into the woods the night before. The darkness that had once seemed so impenetrable had given way to a dawn of self-discovery. Clara had found a strength within herself that she never knew existed. The ordeal had forged a new strength within her, a steeliness she never knew she possessed. It was as if the forest had whispered its secrets to her, teaching her the ways of survival and resilience. She had learned to trust herself, to rely on her instincts. She had stared fear in the face and emerged victorious. The shadows that had once loomed large now seemed insignificant. Clara had faced her demons and had come out stronger on the other side, and she knew that whatever life threw at her, she would face it with the same courage and determination. The forest had been her crucible, and she had emerged tempered and unbreakable. She was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The sun climbed higher in the sky, bathing the world in its warm light. It was a new day, a new beginning. The light filtered through the trees, casting a golden glow on the path ahead. Clara felt a sense of renewal, a rebirth of spirit. Clara reached the edge of the woods and paused, looking back at the path she had traveled. The journey had been long and arduous, but it had also been transformative. She had entered the forest as one person and was leaving as another. She had been lost, but now she was found. The forest had been a labyrinth of trials, but it had also been a place of self-discovery. Clara had found her way, not just out of the woods, but back to herself. She had been broken, but now she was whole. The pieces of her shattered self had been put back together, stronger and more resilient than before. Clara felt a sense of completeness, a wholeness that she had never known. Clara turned and walked towards her house, her head held high, ready to reclaim her life and face the future with newfound strength and resilience. She was a survivor. The journey through the forest had been a test, and she had passed with flying colors. Now she was ready to embrace the challenges of the world beyond the woods, armed with the strength she had discovered within herself.